You've felt it before. That creeping sense that something in you is working against you. You sabotage relationships right when they get close. You procrastinate when success is near. You eat poorly right after making a commitment to health. You lie, even when the truth would serve you better. It's not stupidity. It's not weakness. It's something deeper. Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, called it Thanatos, the death drive. And though it was one of his most controversial and unsettling ideas, it might be the key to understanding why the greatest threat to your life is not outside you. It's you. Why would any rational being destroy its own well-being? This question isn't just philosophical, it's deeply human. We've all felt the sting of watching ourselves ruin something precious. We ghost people who love us. We delay our dreams. We lash out at those who offer us support. We betray our own health, our purpose, our peace. And then we ask ourselves, almost helplessly, why did I do that? Sigmund Freud gave an answer that was as radical as it was unsettling, because not everything within us is rational. We are not monolithic beings. We are battlegrounds. Beneath the polished surface of your conscious mind, the part that speaks, decides, and plans, there lies a vast, murky, and powerful realm, the unconscious. A shadowy underworld shaped by forgotten memories, suppressed desires, unresolved traumas, and archaic instincts. And within this invisible realm, Freud identified a conflict between two immense and opposing forces, two drives that shape every human life. On one side stands Eros, the life drive. This is the force of connection, creativity, intimacy, growth, and survival. Eros pulls us toward others, compels us to build families, societies, civilizations. It inspires the artist to paint, the lover to touch, the healer to serve, the child to explore. It is the will to live, not just exist, but to thrive, to expand. But on the other side lurks Thanatos, the death drive. This is the drive toward aggression, destruction, and a return to non-existence. It is not just violence toward others, but toward oneself. It is the compulsion to numb, to sabotage, to unravel what has been built. Relationships, careers, reputations, bodies, even sanity. It is the quiet pullback toward stillness, toward the grave, toward a time before pain ever existed. Freud introduced the concept of Thanatos after observing something chilling in his patients. Many trauma survivors would unconsciously recreate their trauma. Abuse victims would end up in abusive relationships. Soldiers returned from war only to seek danger again. Children of neglect would become adults who ignored their own needs. Again and again, they repeated suffering that should have been left behind. This repetition wasn't conscious. It wasn't chosen. It was compulsive. And Freud, refusing to explain this solely as social learning or moral failure, looked deeper. He saw that somewhere within us there is a current, dark, ancient, seductive, that longs not for healing, but for dissolution. It may sound extreme to say that a person wants to destroy themselves, but Freud's view is more nuanced. Thanatos is not a suicidal cry. It is a drive, a biological and psychological tendency to seek the end of tension, to quiet the storm of being. You feel it in moments when life becomes too loud, when you want to disappear, when your success terrifies you, when peace feels unfamiliar, and chaos feels like home. It's in the temptation to give up just before a breakthrough, to push away someone who finally sees you, to destroy the version of you that has outgrown your past. Thanatos doesn't scream, it whispers. Go back. Let it all fall. Don't fight anymore. Oblivion is softer than becoming. And if you've ever wondered why you resist the very things that would save you, love, change, growth, the answer may not be fear alone. It may be that some deep part of you finds comfort in collapse. Freud didn't believe Thanatos was evil. He saw it as a natural counterpart to Eros. Every living thing must die. Every structure must decay. Every form must return to formlessness. Just as Eros animates life, Thanatos reclaims it. This force is evident not only in personal neuroses, but in history itself. Wars that follow peace, revolutions that consume their own children, addictions that surge amid abundance. The death drive is not just personal, it's civilizational. In some ways, Thanatos is the hunger for control when the world becomes overwhelming. It is easier sometimes to destroy what we cannot master, even if what we destroy is ourselves. The true paradox is this. Within you, the desire to live and the desire to cease coexist. And every day, in subtle ways, you choose which one will guide your thoughts, your actions, your relationships, your future. To choose Eros is not to ignore the darkness. It is to acknowledge the presence of Thanatos without giving it the wheel. It is to say, I see my urge to run, to destroy, to disappear, but I will stay, I will create, I will connect. Choosing life, real, vulnerable, conscious life, is not naive, it is defiant, it is revolutionary, and that is the power Freud left us with, not just the horror of our inner death drive, but the invitation to understand it, and in doing so, to transcend it. Sigmund Freud called it the repetition compulsion, a silent, unconscious force that drives you to reenact the very suffering you wish to escape. To the untrained eye, it looks like bad luck. But beneath the surface, it's not chance, it's pattern. What we cannot remember, we are doomed to repeat. This isn't just poetic, it's a psychological truth. What isn't processed consciously gets encoded as behavior. The wound becomes a script, the pain becomes a blueprint, and the psyche, in its strange and tragic logic, follows that blueprint as if it's the only map it knows. Have you ever noticed it? You swear you've learned your lesson, and yet you fall in love again with someone who cannot love you back. You trust again, only to be betrayed in the same way. You start a new job, but end up sabotaging it at the exact moment when things were turning in your favor. You promise to change, and yet the same behavior reappears, wearing a different mask. It's maddening and it feels like you're cursed. But the truth is darker and more liberating. You're not cursed. You're repeating. The repetition compulsion is not a desire for pain, it's a desire for mastery, a misguided attempt by the unconscious mind to return to the original trauma, the betrayal, the abandonment, the humiliation, and finally do it right. But because the past cannot be changed, and because the wound was suffered when we were powerless, the result is not healing, it's reenactment. And so the child who is never seen grows into an adult who seeks validation from people who will never give it. The woman who was controlled by her parents finds herself in relationship after relationship with controlling partners. The man who felt invisible keeps choosing careers where he is overlooked and underappreciated. Each time, the unconscious whispers, maybe this time I'll win, maybe this time I'll be loved, maybe this time they'll stay. But it never works. Because you're trying to resolve the past in the theater of the present, and the stage always collapses. This is where Freud's Thanatos, the death drive, reveals itself most seductively. At first glance, you're not doing anything harmful. You're just falling in love. You're just trying again. You're giving it one more shot. But underneath that effort is the pull toward the familiar, even if that familiarity is toxic. Because what is familiar feels safe, even if it hurts. Your nervous system doesn't crave joy. It craves what it knows. And if what it knows is chaos, abandonment, rejection, then those patterns become your strange comfort zone. And each repetition deepens the groove, like a needle on a broken record, playing the same melancholic tune again and again until it becomes the soundtrack of your life. Today, neuroscience echoes Freud's theory with chilling clarity. The brain wires itself around early experiences. If love was unpredictable, your nervous system may equate love with anxiety. Traumatized brains become addicted to the chemical rush of stress. Cortisol becomes a drug, adrenaline becomes familiar. Calm feels like danger, because you never knew safety. The amygdala, the brain's fear center, becomes hyperactive. It hijacks logic. It steers you not toward what's good, but toward what's known. This creates what scientists call emotional memory traces, unconscious templates that override reason and lead you back to what you swore you'd escape. In short, what's familiar feels safe to your brain, even if it's slowly killing your soul. The repetition compulsion cannot be broken by willpower alone. You're not failing because you're weak. You're failing because you're stuck in a loop that was written before you had words. So how do you escape it? Radical self-awareness. Begin to observe the pattern without judgment. Write it down, map it out. What happens right before you self-sabotage? What kinds of people are you drawn to? What roles do you fall into? Feel what was never felt. Behind the repetition is an original wound that was never fully processed. Perhaps grief, perhaps rage, perhaps abandonment. Let it move through you now. Cry what was never cried, scream what was never screamed, recognize the illusion of mastery. Every repetition is an unconscious attempt to change the outcome, but you cannot fix your childhood through your lover. You cannot heal neglect through your boss. You cannot find peace by recreating war. Interrupt the pattern with something unfamiliar. Choose calm, choose stability, choose love without adrenaline. It will feel uncomfortable at first, like something is missing. That something is the chaos you're used to. Stay anyway. Rewire through conscious choice. Healing isn't about deleting your past. It's about making new choices in the present that your old self never imagined were possible. It's about teaching your brain that safety exists, that love doesn't have to hurt, that success doesn't require suffering. There's something profoundly spiritual hidden inside the repetition compulsion. Your unconscious isn't your enemy. It's simply trying to bring you back to the place where you were broken, so you can finally return whole. The mistake is thinking the past can be rewritten through reenactment. The truth is, it can only be rewritten through awareness, integration, and transformation. And perhaps that's the deepest paradox of all. The pattern you keep repeating isn't there to punish you, it's there to wake you up. Freud didn't have brain scans, no fMRI, no EEGs, no neurochemical assays. What he had was intuition, razor-sharp observation, and a willingness to stare into the darkest chambers of the human soul. And what he saw was terrifying. We are not beings who simply pursue happiness. We are conflicted organisms, haunted by unconscious forces, torn between survival and surrender, connection and collapse. Today, neuroscience is catching up to what Freud already glimpsed. The unconscious is no longer just a Freudian metaphor. It's a neurobiological reality. And many of the patterns Freud described, sabotage, compulsive repetition, the death drive, now have scientific signatures in the brain. The default mode network is the orchestra of brain regions that becomes most active when you are not engaged in a specific external task, when your mind is at rest. But rest is deceptive. This is the mental space where you replay past failures, imagine future catastrophes, judge yourself, compare yourself, spiral into regret, guilt, shame, and hopelessness. The DMN is heavily involved in self-referential thinking, your internal monologue about who you are and what you're worth. In people suffering from depression, anxiety, and low self-esteem, the DMN is often overactive and poorly regulated. It becomes a kind of internal torture chamber. This relentless mental noise drowns out intuition, numbs motivation, and breeds paralysis. In other words, it lays the groundwork for self-sabotage. You talk yourself out of what you most want before the world ever gets a chance to. The amygdala is your brain's fear center, the ancient structure that scans your environment for threat. In a healthy state, it helps you survive. But in a traumatized brain, it goes rogue. If you grew up in an environment where love was unpredictable, punishment was random, or neglect was the norm, your amygdala becomes hyperactive. It starts to perceive threat even when you're safe. It mistakes calm for vulnerability. It associates intimacy with danger. So what happens? You push people away before they can hurt you. You procrastinate because success feels like exposure. You sabotage joy because your nervous system doesn't trust it will last. You don't feel alive unless something is about to go wrong. This is not weakness, it's wiring. Your brain has been trained to expect pain, so it creates it in advance, just to stay one step ahead. Cortisol is the hormone your body releases during stress. It mobilizes energy, sharpens focus, and prepares you for danger. It's useful, in short bursts. But when the stress never ends, your body adapts. Over time, people who grow up in high-stress environments develop a chemical dependency on cortisol. It becomes the fuel their body runs on. Calm feels unnatural. Peace feels intolerable. Stillness feels like death. This is why some people always stir the pot in relationships, pick fights out of nowhere, wait until the last minute to complete tasks, ruin something good before it gets too serious. It's not irrational, it's the only reality their body knows. Chaos, urgency, tension. These are the conditions under which they feel most themselves. Their nervous system is addicted to the storm. Freud didn't need brain scans to see it. He watched people do the same things over and over. Not because they wanted to suffer, but because some part of them didn't know who they were without that suffering. We are not simply beings that seek pleasure, Freud wrote. We are beings haunted by the return of the repressed. And what is repressed always finds its way back, not through dreams alone, but through decisions, through accidents, through that familiar moment when you look at your life and whisper, "I did it again." Freud called this drive Thanatos, the silent wish to return to nothingness, to end the struggle, to escape the noise of existence. In Freud's time, his theory of the death drive was dismissed as morbid speculation. But now the data suggests otherwise. We are discovering people with higher trauma scores are more likely to engage in self-harming behaviors. Emotional pain activates the same brain regions as physical pain. Chronic stress literally shrinks the brain's ability to regulate emotion and memory. Even cells respond to trauma, through epigenetic changes that pass self-destructive tendencies from one generation to the next. The urge to self-sabotage is not a failure of character. It is a biological, psychological, and ancestral inheritance, a scar shaped by time, stored in tissue, and etched into thought. Understanding the science doesn't cure the compulsion, but it illuminates the mechanism, and what is illuminated can be rewired. The moment you name the pattern, it begins to lose its grip. You begin to notice, this is not intuition, this is trauma speaking. This isn't boredom, it's the unfamiliar feeling of safety. This isn't self-sabotage, it's my body craving a stress loop it was raised on. And in that moment of recognition, you create space, a gap, a window through which you can choose differently. The death drive may be ancient, but so is the will to live. Freud called it eros, and it lives in you too. The death drive is rarely loud. It doesn't announce itself with obvious destruction. It often wears the mask of normalcy, perfectionism, detachment, procrastination, self-doubt. But beneath these behaviors lies a psychic undercurrent, the pull toward repetition, toward familiar pain, toward psychological non-existence. Here are just a few of the countless ways Thanatos manifests in real life, not in extreme trauma, but in the quiet, tragic decisions of everyday people. 1. The genius who never finishes. He's brilliant. His ideas are revolutionary. His notebooks overflow with concepts that could change the world, but he never publishes, never presents, never lets others see what he creates. He polishes, tweaks, rewrites endlessly. He says it's not ready, but the truth runs deeper. But deep inside, there's a psychic reflex. If I let you love me, you might leave. If I let you see me, you might abandon me. His nervous system doesn't trust affection. It was used as a weapon once. And real love, real intimacy, that threatens to heal something he's built his entire identity around, being unloved. To accept connection would mean letting go of the suffering he secretly clings to. It would mean the death of the old self, and the ego fears dissolution more than anything. So the death drive wears the face of independence, pride, self-sufficiency. But beneath it is pure fear of healing. 3. The addict who finds peace in relapse. She's gone to rehab, she's read the books, she's even had months, years of sobriety. But the relapse always comes, not at the worst moment, but right when life gets better, when things begin to feel calm. It doesn't make sense until you understand the psychic logic of addiction. For some, pain isn't just an emotion, it becomes identity. The chaos of substance use, the guilt, the shame, the loss, is familiar, predictable. It feels like home. Sobriety, on the other hand, brings an eerie stillness. No noise, no drama, no excuse to hide behind, just the mirror. And sometimes, looking into that mirror, sober, present, exposed, is more unbearable than the pain of relapse. The return to addiction is not always a fall. Sometimes it's a retreat to the womb, to the darkness before responsibility, before selfhood, a symbolic death. The death drive here doesn't want to destroy the person. It wants to erase the unbearable weight of being. In each of these stories, the individual is not seeking suffering for its own sake. They are choosing the devil they know over the mystery of transformation. Why? Because suffering, for all its agony, is predictable. It has rules. It feels earned. It reinforces the identity they've worn for decades. Change, however, threatens to unravel the ego, the carefully constructed self built around trauma, rejection, and limitation. Better the familiar hell than the unknown heaven. This is the core tragedy of the death drive. Not that it wants literal death, but that it desires the absence of inner conflict, even if that peace comes through collapse, disconnection, or annihilation. In this way, the death drive is not a monster. It is a misunderstood messenger. A voice whispering, I can't carry this mask any longer. I want out. I want silence, even if it costs me everything. But the real path forward is not annihilation. It is integration. It is hearing that voice, not obeying it, and choosing to live a life beyond survival. A life where visibility is not terror, where love is not a threat, and where stillness is not death, but freedom. Sigmund Freud uncovered the primal force of Thanatos, the death drive, that eerie, silent pull toward destruction, regression, and psychic dissolution. But it was Carl Jung, Freud's brilliant and rebellious protege, who gave that darkness a name and a face: the shadow. Where Freud focused on drives and instincts, Jung ventured deeper into the architecture of the psyche, into symbols, archetypes, myths, and what he called the collective unconscious. And within this internal cosmos, he found that every human being carries a second self, a mirror self, made up of everything we deny, reject, repress, or cannot accept in ourselves. He called this hidden counterpart the shadow. The shadow is not evil. It's not a villain lurking in the mind. It is a psychic container, a dark reservoir of the parts of us we've been taught not to show. It holds our forbidden desires, our rage and lust, our envy and pride, but also our grief, humiliation, shame, vulnerability, and fear. The shadow is everything you've pushed away in order to survive in society, in your family, in your culture. It is what you exiled to fit in. It is what you buried so you could be good, strong, or successful. But nothing repressed stays buried forever. The shadow doesn't disappear, it festers. And when it's denied long enough, it begins to act out through sabotage, projection, emotional outbursts, addictions, failed relationships, even physical illness. Until you make the unconscious conscious, Jung said, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. When Freud's Thanatos, the drive toward annihilation, fuses with Jung's rejected self, you get a psychic storm, a powerful, invisible force pushing you not just to suffer, but to be undone. Not because you want to suffer, but because the weight of what you've hidden, your truth, your needs, your pain, becomes unbearable, and the unconscious, unable to express itself in healthy language, screams through destruction. A woman who's always been the good girl explodes in uncontrollable rage. A man who's always been in control spirals into addiction. A therapist who helps others secretly sabotages her own relationships. These aren't anomalies. They are the consequences of disowning the shadow. When we repress what we fear, we give it power. When we exile our pain, it becomes our saboteur. The urge to self-destruct is often the last resort of a fragmented soul, begging to be felt, seen, integrated. Jung did not teach people to destroy the shadow. He taught them to befriend it, to dialogue with it, to sit in its discomfort and ask, "What are you trying to tell me?" Because hidden in the shadow is not only your darkness, but your depth, your creativity, your intuition, your sensuality, your assertiveness, your truth. Every quality you need to become whole, to become real, lies trapped in the very parts of you that you've been taught to fear. The death drive wants relief. The shadow wants integration. And if you can listen without judgment, you may discover that what you thought was self-destruction was the soul's desperate attempt to become one again. True transformation, Jung taught, is not found in light alone, but in the union of opposites, day and night, masculine and feminine, strength and softness, life and death. One does not become enlightened, Jung wrote, by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Integrating the shadow is an act of inner alchemy. You take the raw material of your shame, rage, and fear, and through awareness, compassion, and truth, you transmute them into power, wisdom, and freedom. The drive to destroy yourself is not madness, it's a message from the parts of you that were silenced too long. Not everything in you wants to die. Some part of you wants to live differently, but doesn't yet know how. And the path to that life begins where you least expect it. In the very darkness you were told to fear. The death drive doesn't vanish with effort. You can't outthink it. You can't hustle your way past it. What you can do is bring light to it. Not to kill it, but to understand it, and ultimately to transcend it. To break the pattern, you don't need more self-control. You need radical self-connection. Below are the 4 pillars of that process. This is not a to-do list. It's a lifelong path of awareness, grieving, reconditioning, and integration. 1. Radical awareness. See the pattern to stop the pattern. You can't heal what you won't face, and you can't face what you refuse to see. Self-sabotage is not random. It's not weakness. It's coded behavior, written by a wounded psyche trying to protect itself. Every time you procrastinate, explode, isolate, relapse, or give up right before the finish line, it's not because you're broken. It's because some part of you is afraid. The question is not, why am I doing this again? The real question is, what am I afraid will happen if I succeed? Who do I stop being if I let go of the pain? What part of me is trying to keep me safe? And from what? Most people never pause to ask, they just repeat. Awareness is the crack in the loop. The moment you bring consciousness to the pattern, you are no longer fully inside it. You've stepped into the witness role, and from there, change becomes possible. 2. Grieve your wound. Feel to become whole. Beneath every act of self-destruction is an ancient unmet need, a moment where the world failed you, and your psyche wrote a rule. I'm not worthy. It's not safe to trust. Love means pain. My truth is dangerous. These rules don't disappear because you ignore them. They vanish when you bring them into the light and feel what you never had the chance to feel. That means grief, the grief of being unloved, the rage of being ignored, the shame of never feeling enough, the loneliness of performing your whole life to be accepted. This isn't indulgent, it's sacred. Feeling is how we metabolize trauma. Tears are not weakness, they are alchemical. They dissolve the frozen scripts we carry. They bring the past into the body, and then finally, out. Until you grieve, you'll repeat. Your body isn't just a vessel, it's an emotional map, a memory bank, a reflex machine that runs on survival programming. Not happiness, not success, but familiarity. If you grew up in chaos, chaos feels like home. If love came with pain, peace feels suspicious. If joy was fleeting, you sabotage it before it leaves you. The good news? The nervous system can be rewired. Through neuroplasticity, your brain and body can learn new emotional languages. That calm is not boring. It's freedom, that stability is not weakness. It's power, that peace is not emptiness. It's clarity, that you don't need adrenaline to feel alive. Every time you sit with stillness and breathe through the urge to create chaos, you're rewriting your operating system. Every time you choose love over fear, presence over panic, you reclaim another inch of your inner territory. This is the real work. Subtle, slow, and revolutionary. Too many people fight their darkness like it's the enemy. They try to meditate it away, think it away, perform their way out of it. But the truth is, your darkness holds your power. Your rage contains your boundaries. Your shame hides your need for dignity. Your fear protects your longing. Your resistance guards your truth. Jung said that the goal is not to become good, but to become whole. That means learning to listen to your dark impulses, not blindly obey them, but understand them. I see you, self-sabotage. What are you trying to protect me from? I hear you, inner critic. What part of me do you think you're saving? I feel you, numbness. What pain are you shielding me from today? When you stop trying to kill the dragon and instead learn to ride it, something remarkable happens. The energy you once spent in suppression becomes creative fire. You stop being at war with yourself, and for the first time, your life begins to move forward, not from fear, not from ego, but from integration. The death drive doesn't mean you want to die. It means you want something to end. The mask, the exhaustion, the pressure, the pain. You want rest, silence, release. But there is another path. Instead of self-destruction, choose self-revelation. Let the death drive do its true work, not to destroy you, but to end the version of you that was built to survive, not to live. Then, from those ashes, something new can emerge. Something real, something whole, something free. Freud's death drive isn't about literal death. It's about the longing for silence, for the end of conflict, for the return to the womb, the void, the nothingness before thought and pain. But between life and death, there is a third path, transformation. And that path begins when you stop running from your inner saboteur and start speaking with it. In the end, self-destruction is not madness. It is a misunderstood message from the deepest part of you. One that says, I am tired of pretending. I am tired of masks. I want peace, but I don't know how to get it without vanishing. To hear that voice is not to fall. It is to awaken. And once awakened, the very instinct that once destroyed you can become the force that sets you free.